Fight!
They say if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and Bandai Namco smartly hasn't tried to change the parts of Tekken's combat mechanics that were already great. Movement, spacing, block punishing, and whiff punishing all remain as vital as ever.
Guys, we just got a new Tekken 8. And let's talk about Tekken for a while. You know, it's like one of those franchises that... You know, there are 20-year-old games like Distriga that actually have better action combat than Tekken today. You know, Tekken hasn't seen any innovation in last 5 years. So...
Good morning.
Anyone who played Tekken 3 back in the day probably has a core memory associated with it. Let's say you go into your friend's house and after your mom drops you off, you run straight up the stairs to their room, and as you get there, you see the grey PS1 on the floor, green light glowing, and it's running what seems to be a fighting game with 3D visuals and music that immediately triggers your child dopamine receptors. Your friend is playing as a man who seems to be breakdancing all over the screen, destroying anyone in their way. And then they proceed to kick your ass. Tekken 3 is a fighting game of the PlayStation 1 era that at some point everyone played. The legacy of Tekken 3 is still felt to this day, and this is why we still talk about it, 25 years later.
It feels like in 2024 a lot of gaming studios are pretty outdated, you know. For example, we have MOBA studios that mostly only still cater to Conquest and Dota players and ignore a big chunk of their player base. We've seen a lot of these really good games, especially coming from Japanese gaming studios like Elden Ring, Tekken, Monster Hunter franchise, that, you know, it really shows they know how to make good games, but often feels like they don't really feel complete games, you know. The lack of multiplayer elements, the lack of social features, open world elements that could really lift those games up to the next level.
But two significant additions also twist these mechanics in exciting new ways: recoverable health and the heat system. For the first time in Tekken history, other than the non-canonical Tekken Tag tournament games, recoverable health plays a major part in matches. Blocking big attacks and taking chip damage, absorbing them with a power crush, or being hit after getting knocked airborne will do partial gray damage.
Oh shit! Yeah, the crazy thing is that, like, the mobility. Okay. It looks good for a PS1 game. I definitely don't think this game's a looker. It doesn't look great, but it's definitely interesting.
For example, you know, just in Monster Hunter franchise, imagine you could actually tame all these epic monsters and then proudly show them to your friends in the city. Imagine if the city would be actually alive, full of people, not just NPCs standing around. And that's what the difference of a good game that has, you know, a game that will last 2 years or a game that can potentially last up to 10 years, you know. I highly suggest watching the King's Avatar animation from Tencent. You used to watch it free on YouTube, but I don't know why they removed it. But the King's Avatar animation is probably one of the best gaming anime. If you love gaming, I highly suggest you watch it, because it really shows and teach you what it feels like, you know, how to make a complete MMORPG or MOBA game. Only they can, you know, repackage the same game 8 times and sell it at 70 euros, man. And what is new to the franchise? It's still the same two-dimensional combat, right? Just a few new skins and assets, that's all it is, you know. So, what are we doing here? But as we know, a lot of these Japanese gaming studio, they know how to make great games, but they don't know how to make complete games, you know. For example, Monster Hunter franchise could be so much more if they will just have, you know, city full of people, clans, open world elements, multiplayer, social features, ranked competitive features, right? Imagine you could actually tame monsters in Monster Hunter, and then when you come back to the city, you proudly show it to your friends and enemies. City full of people, not just NPCs standing around. Same story with Elden Ring. A lot of the game design issues, 50-50 quest chains, no ranked leaderboard or rewards for Colosseum players. lack of social features, lack of multiplayer elements. You know, their games could be so much more. I highly suggest watching the King's Avatar animation to learn how to actually make a complete MMORPG or MOBA game. Most gaming studios are totally outdated, like for example MOBA studios who only cater to Conquest and Dota players, you know, and ignore everybody else. That's why Arena is huge open niche for any MOBA gaming studio out there. And it's the same story with other gaming studios like Smite 2 or Seasoned Discovery in World of Warcraft. Just rehashing, you know, 20-year-old content that people did for these gaming studios 20 years ago. And most of these people don't even work at these companies anymore, right? There is barely any new content. In Smite 1, we didn't get a new content in the last 5 years. You know, Arena and Conquest are two most popular game modes, right? And we have 6-year-old Arena map, no rank leaderboard, no rewards, no rank functionality, you know, no community tournaments, no actual real rankings. So why would anybody watch sports and esports anymore, you know? That's also the reason why Arena is such a big open niche, especially for any MOBA studio. You can literally just make a you know, decent gameplay, Arena style map with rank leaderboard rewards, a good social system like voice chat, and you already have a very good game. Because most MOBA studios, for example Smite, Arena and Conquest, aka Dota, are two most popular game modes, but we only have a rank leaderboard and rewards for Dota Conquest. Harris has been literally forcing players into Conquest, right? Arena has a map that is 6-year-old, meanwhile Conquest gets new map like every 2 months, you know? So they're ignoring a big chunk of their player base, and no matter how good the game you make, you won't get a lot of players if you ignore a big chunk of your player base. For example, just in Smite, you know, I have been playing Smite for 10 years, I have some experience. They're ignoring EU players, which is probably the biggest region. They're ignoring international players, console players, there is no Pro League for console players. They're ignoring Arena players, which is the biggest region. For example, each game a Hi-Res or a Titanfall studio does, right? They have Conquest versus Arena. In Smite, they have Strikeout vs Domination. In Rogue Company, and they have Deathmatch versus Siege in Paladins. You see, it's always the same story. You always have this divided ranked community. They're only giving it, or they're only, you know, listening to the 50% of their player base and ignoring people for years and years. No matter how much you love the game, you have no chance to prove it. We have no community tournaments, right? No official tournaments, no real rankings. And even sports, this is the problem why nobody watches sports and esports anymore. If you don't organize community tournaments, if you have no real rankings, why would anybody still watch sports and esports? People wanna watch sports because they wanna see who's the best. Competitive spirit. And if you do things right, you don't even need to promote. People will watch naturally. All you have to do is organize tournaments and have real rankings. And then people will watch naturally. And this is how you naturally get a sponsorship and viewership. Right? And this is what a lot of these sport promotion industry guys don't really get, you know?